The Old Testament makes up roughly 75% of the Bible, but most readers treat it like an art museum. You walk the halls, stopping to look at isolated flat paintings, a story from Exodus over here, a psalm over there. You can admire the individual pieces, but without seeing how they connect to a larger narrative, it is difficult to recognize how God is speaking through the volume as a whole. Old Testament theology is designed to solve this. It's a framework built to take you out of the museum and put you on top of a mountain. From there, you see how the landscape connects to form a single, coherent picture. Staying in the museum means these stories remain fragments. You lose the connective tissue that turns a collection of ancient writings into a single, living message. But there is a catch. Standard Christian systematic theology organizes doctrines to answer modern questions. Old Testament theology operates differently. It tries to describe the theology that natively emerges from the ancient text itself. The complication is that scholars cannot agree on how to find or organize that native theology. Their approaches are often diametrically opposed. The field is so fractured that some academics complain biblical theology has become a wax nose. It gets bent and molded to fit whatever methodology a particular scholar prefers. When you buy an Old Testament theology book, you are stepping into a 200-year-old academic war. The author's chosen method will dictate which parts of the Bible they emphasize and which they ignore. To find a resource that actually helps you, you have to understand the specific trade-offs built into how these books are constructed. The first major flashpoint is unity versus diversity. A unity approach, like Walter Eichrott's covenant theme, organizes 39 diverse books into one structured system, but marginalizes dissenting texts. Gerhard von Rad's historical diversity approach respects textual evolution, but loses a central unifying anchor. You have to decide what you are willing to give up. You can sacrifice historical nuance to get a teachable doctrine, or you can sacrifice a unified center to respect the text's complexity. That brings us to the next divide. Should a theology book merely describe ancient beliefs, or prescribe how we live today? The descriptive method is strictly historical. It maps exactly what the ancient Israelites thought about God, recording their beliefs as an ancient artifact. The limitation here is that a strictly historical map provides no authoritative guidance for a modern community trying to find its way. The prescriptive method connects the text directly to modern life, but this carries a specific risk. You easily end up projecting modern Christian concepts backward onto an ancient Near Eastern culture. Before you open a book, you have to choose your objective. Determine if you are trying to reconstruct an ancient civilization, or if you are trying to hear God speak to you today. We can see what happens when these tensions are ignored by looking at a mid-20th century phenomenon called the Biblical Theology movement. This movement attempted to ground its entire theology in the physical, provable events of biblical archaeology. They wanted faith tied strictly to historical proof. When archaeological consensus shifted and certain events became harder to historically verify, the movement collapsed, taking its theological foundations down with it. To avoid that trap, modern scholars splintered. They divided their efforts into three distinct paths: history, theme, and context. Works like Understanding Old Testament Theology make sense of this. The subtitle, Mapping the Terrain of Recent Approaches, shows scholars charting these diverging methods. Pinning theology strictly to shifting historical data proved to be a liability. Now, readers must choose their interpretive lens with extreme caution. Translating the Old Testament into a systematic theology is like projecting a 3D globe onto a flat map. The Mercator projection preserves the exact shape of the continents, but to achieve that, it distorts their size, making Greenland look as massive as South America. Old Testament theology works the same way. No single methodology can represent the entire text without warping or minimizing something else. There is no objective, flawless textbook. You have to decide which distortion serves your specific needs. Success depends on matching the right methodological tool to the job you actually need to do. This decision map will help you choose between the three major modern paths. It starts with one question: what is your primary goal? If your goal is purely academic, tracking how the ancient text evolved, you want the historical route. But avoid this route if you need Sunday application. It's disconnected from modern faith. If you want to teach the unified narrative of the Bible, the theme route provides the cleanest structure. However, skip this if you're studying obscure legal texts. Theme-based approaches gloss over the gritty details. Finally, if reading the text strictly as a Christian document fulfilled by Jesus, the canonical route is your best option. Just be aware it's a poor choice for interfaith dialogue, as it overlays Christian framework that changes the text's original meaning. By embracing these trade-offs and choosing your path intentionally, you leave the fragmented museum behind. You finally have the tools to navigate the mountain.